Thank you for watching Fireside. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider liking and subscribing to be notified when future episodes release. Enjoy. But it is really interesting to hear that you can't come from retail. So you stopped playing around like Dragonflight. That's when I quit. Is around Dragonflight. Can you? And if someone asked you, if Jimmy asked this already, feel free to just say, and we can move on. But I'm curious, what pushed you away from retail? What were the elements of retail that you were like, fuck this?
Oh no, no one's asked me that yet. To be honest, the hamster wheel was less enjoyable, and retail punishes you for not logging in. And you just can't avoid this. And there's also another thing which some people know about or slash talk about, but there's a thing called retail depression that I would describe as you log into the game, you sit in the major city, and then you just feel like logging out. And I feel like retail WoW is a combination of the hamster wheel of just Mythic plus raid, and then the retail depression of logging into the game. And just not really feeling like playing. And a lot of people hit that wall, and I definitely hit that wall.
I'm sorry, continue.
I would say what makes you hit that wall too is like the community you don't really feel like you have a community in retail WoW. You feel like you're just alone. And that's kind of how it feels.
Yeah, I think I'll echo that. It's interesting you say something like, it punishes you for not logging in. And I agree with that. There's a lot of dailies. There's a lot of FOMO in that regard, weeklies, all that kind of stuff. But similarly, I feel like retail punishes you for not logging in, and it punishes you for logging in too much, because there's a certain point where you just kind of mow through all your like chores. And then you're like, okay, well, there's two pieces of content. There's Mythic Plus, because raid lockouts exist. So Mythic Plus, or you can log off. That's it, right? Unless you PvP. So like for me, it was like, I want to play the game more, but it's really not giving me enough reason or motivation to do that, especially when so much of everything in the game has become kind of like this homogenized blob of either you can collect cosmetic items, or you do content that's going to require like 3 weeks of progression, 400 wipes to see any progress. And that was like the binary of retail to me.
Yeah, it's a lot of repetition. And to be honest, like, you really have to find your tribe in retail WoW. And it's very hard to like find your tribe, like people that you vibe with, socially, whether it's in Discord, in the game, and on your same skill level. Like, you can find someone that you vibe with socially. Like me and you, we might be boys and we might hang out, but I might suck, dude, at Mythic Plus, and you're trying to push high Mythic Plus, and you just can't bring me along. And so there's a lot of, and when you're pushing higher skill level games, and it's a group game where you need other people to do the content, it's very tough to find people that you vibe with socially and skill wise in order to like build a team that play at the same hours as you at the same time, and like to build that coercion, that team element. It's very tough to find in retail, like the perfect combination of people to play with.
Yeah, 100%. I'm lucky, right, with retail. I had a Mythic guild for many years that I raided with. We did Cutting Edge. And then before that, in Legion, I ran my own guild. And that's actually where I really met and befriended my group Ironman partner, the person that I do my GM with in OSRS. I essentially met him in Legion, and we became like really, really good friends during our time like leading the guild throughout Legion. And so I'm lucky in that regard, but I completely agree with you. It's so difficult to like punch through the social, like the necessary social elements of retail, but how much of retail systems actively disincentivize you from engaging socially as well. It's like this, like it's constantly fighting against itself. It wants to be a solo game where everything in the overworld is solo, everything in your leveling is solo. You're taught while you're learning the game, to be solo, to not talk to anyone. And then at the end game, it's like, well, you better learn to speak. And that sucks, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely see that issue. And I talked about this with Jimmy a little bit, but World of Warcraft struggles with issues that, RuneScape doesn't. And it's mainly the Trinity system, like the group aspect of it. And that's what I love about RuneScape, is that you can play most of this game solo if you want to. It just might be a little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a couple group related pieces of content in OSRS. And honestly, I would extend that same criticism to OSRS sometimes, where its group content, I think, has an inadequate grouping system attached to it. Spoilers, that's the topic of my next video. But like, and I'm actually curious because you're a streamer, so you can always pull either from your streaming friends or from your chat to help you out if necessary with group content. But like, would you want to see a WoW-esque grouping system in OSRS where you can click a little button and see everyone listed for a certain piece of content?
Yeah, a queue finder or a way to. I wouldn't really understand. I wouldn't really know how would I would even find someone to do group content with if I wasn't a streamer.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't. I haven't hit that problem in the game. I will say like the chat features and like joining a clan or being in a guild, WoW definitely takes the cake with that interface and just like messaging people in general. I don't even know how to send someone a message in this.
Yeah.
It's a bit tougher to learn that stuff in RuneScape. WoW has a better interface, in my opinion, for group content because the game is completely consumed by group content. It's all you do.
Yep. 100%. I think WoW has a great grouping system. It really does. And I think if OSRS wants more grouping content, and if you ask like any endgame PVM player, they're going to say, my favorite raid, it's TOB. That's my favorite piece of content. I always do TOB. And they do it with like 7 people that they've been doing it for the past 6 years with, because it's so unfathomably challenging to punch through like, because in OSRS, I mean, I'll speak from experience here. When I was learning Chambers of Xeric for the first time, you join a Discord. You have to like find people in that Discord that are willing to essentially waste like 5 to 6 hours of their life teaching you how to do that piece of content. And I think grouping is already like enough friction, right? It's already hard to put yourself out there and potentially brick another person's run. But now you have to go out of your way and like essentially cold call people and be like, I'm sorry, man, can you help? Please, can you please help? And it's super brutal. So to me, I feel like adding less friction in that department would incentivize OSRS to create more grouping content because more people are going to do it. More people are going to want to do TOB if it's a bit easier to just like find learner groups, for example.
Right. Yeah, it would be nice to have a feature like that where people could easily find people, on their skill level that are looking to group up and do the content.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? Because so you talk about retail and you say, you kind of were sick of the treadmill a little bit. So I like posing a question to people that are in your camp. What if retail WoW had to do one thing that would make you go like, okay, I'm going to check it out? What would that thing be? Have you ever thought about that?
Retail WoW?
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine retail WoW being anything different than what it is, which is a Mythic Plus and Raid Simulator in my mind. And it does that really well. So they would have to make, they would have to make, for me to be interested in it, they would have to make WoW too.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that would hype me up, which would be maybe some kind of fusion of classic WoW and retail, but it would have to be insanely like horizontal progression. Like I'm just not interested in the idea of retail WoW unless I want a really hard raid, and I'm not at the point where that interests me right now. I like a more community driven social aspect, classic style MMO. So if Classic Plus is good, then maybe there's some stuff they could do there to get me interested.
I have so many feelings and thoughts and concerns about Classic Plus. So I'd love to hear, your thoughts and concerns about it, because on one hand, it's like, I think everyone's kind of excited for Classic Plus. Even if it's going to be terrible, we're all going to try it out and hope for the best, because I think in our deepest hearts, we still love it. We still love Classic. So we want to make sure it works, and hopefully it does. But what do you think? What's their path to make a successful Classic Plus?
They need to design 20 years of horizontal progression gear and raids before they even start, and have a clear timeline of how they're going to keep the game balanced as well as fun, as well as, keeping everything from not being overpowered. And they have to do that for 8 different classes, which seems like a design nightmare to me. And honestly, the simple answer is they need to just try and be a lot like old school RuneScape and just steal every single possible thing that they can from this game.
Yeah, oh my God, I'm sorry, my cat is freaking out. I kind of echo what you're saying, but my concern with that is their task is to essentially turn a theme park MMO into a more sandboxy MMO. And would classic players, the ones that don't like spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff, even like that? Would they want that?
I personally think that I hear from like Zaru did this thing, last week where he was like polling the chat and asking every question about like a yes or no, add this feature, add this feature. And I just see all of those as like small band-aids or like small features that make the game slightly better. But I feel like classic WoW in our current day and age struggles with like a more of a design problem. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of those things that you can add to the game, whether they can also take a lot, to be honest, from Turtle WoW. But I think that they should also take some inspiration from RuneScape and try to convert the game into a little bit more of a sandboxy style MMO. But that's what I would enjoy. If you tell other people that, like, everyone's opinion on what would make Classic Plus good is just so different, and that's why I feel like the developers struggle with an extremely hard task. But if they do copy a page out of RuneScape's book, the polling the player base is one of the best ideas, I think.
Yeah, I'm mixed on that, I will say. Maybe you could tell me how you feel about my response here. But like, I think on one hand, I agree. I think the only future for Classic that works is one where it's a bit more sandboxy. It has a bit more horizontal stuff to do. It can't just be running around killing shit. It doesn't work for a long term. You can't just have new raids and dungeons as the only patch content. It just doesn't work that way. I agree with that. On the other hand, you kind of totally pointed out exactly what I feel is that the Classic Plus community doesn't seem to have a public or a consensus essentially on what should be the future for WoW. Some people want transmog and don't care about the WoW token and want player housing, and other people are like, just do the raids and dungeons and just leave it that way. And other people have, like you and I, have a completely different perspective on what would work. In my opinion, unfortunately, that's why the polling might not work well, is because the OSRS community were coming into the polling system with a very conservative mentality. They were saying, listen, if anything threatens our game, we're voting no. Moving your camera with the middle mouse button failed the first poll in OSRS. It had to be repolled to pass. So they were so careful about what works. Mm-hmm. But they had a general understanding of what could work. And over time, as the developers proved to them that they can create good content and new ideas and evolve the game, like raids, for example, and now a new skill, the player base softened a little bit. But with Classic WoW, do we have the time for Blizzard to fail and try again? And two, is the player base even able to curate Blizzard with what they do?
Yeah, those are some good points. One thing I think that polling is good for is for all the people that think they have a good idea. Mm-hmm. And they think that they're going to be the ones to like fix Blizzard with their ideas, right? And so you can see if it's a good idea or not if you do a poll. We might not be able to do like a 70% poll system in WoW. It might be too much to tip the scales because, people have always brought up this thing like, what if they poll to remove shamans from the game? And it's just like, no one likes shamans, so we just get rid of them, right? And obviously, like, you hope that something like that wouldn't ever pass, but you never know if people just really are frustrated with that class because it's broken. And that's another thing that's tough to deal with that WoW faces is, class design and balancing, where RuneScape doesn't have to do that. We're all the same class. Yeah. We're all using the exact same gear in RuneScape. So balancing is just a completely another different issue that I feel like is going to be tough to make it work in Classic.
Yeah, I agree. And unfortunately, with maybe it's a plurality poll, right? Like maybe instead of it needing to meet 70%, it needs to be like a super majority or whatever. It can just be like, there's a couple ideas and whichever one gets more votes, even if it's by one, that's the idea that goes in. It could be that, right? But I guess I'm just concerned that like, the player base, even in some cases the classic player base, have become so like accustomed to the way WoW works. It's so like narrow in it, and I say this with love. It's shallow in how in its systems depth. It doesn't interconnect like old school RuneScape. That I'm personally afraid that they're not gonna like appreciate broadening that, because they're just gonna view that as like a waste of time. And that's like my main concern, where like the old school players know that it's going to be a grind and they appreciate that. But with WoW players, I feel like they're always going to vote to shorten it. At least that's, do you agree with that?
What would they shorten?
Well, if we're going the more sandboxy route with Classic, I think that that would inherently require a more grindy approach to designing content, right? Like, for example, if we're going sandboxy with WoW, you probably wouldn't want as many professions restrictions. Like, instead of just two, yeah.
In my opinion, I think that I would want to see them change that. Yeah, I would want everyone to be able to do every profession, and you almost need to do all the professions in order to have BIS, which is not exactly what WoW is like right now. Most people just skip professions altogether or get like one, and they don't really even pursue it, because WoW is more of a combat simulator. If you're not doing combat, then you're not having a good time. And I feel like that the journey in general is people's favorite part of the game in Classic, but the journey is too short.
Yeah.
In Classic. After playing RuneScape, I've realized that they need to like extend the journey in the game somehow.
Yep. And you know, it's so interesting, right? Because I mean, I don't know if you agree with me here, but to me, the best part of Classic WoW is leveling. The zones, there's like 40 of them between both continents. And the way that the pacing works is where, you know, one zone has like 8 quests that are for your level. So you go do those, and then you like travel across the fucking world to go do another 2 quests, right? You go from like Desolus to Alteric Valley and then back to Desolus. And then you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll just do something in Ashen Vale. It's crazy, right? You're going everywhere. And another, I guess, concern with that would be, well, Blizzard's going to want to do some quality of life. Maybe they add more quests. Maybe their ideas, oh, it's going to be like Classic, but there's going to be more quests everywhere. And then that totally destroys the pacing. You just get to 60 within like 8 zones instead of having to travel between 40. And like, that's just an example of one of those issues where the leveling is so great. And I'm always concerned with their fear that the leveling is already too long. So why would they make it longer, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of different opinions, like I said, and what makes people like an MMO. And it's tough to keep it WoW-like and send it to Classic Plus, because my vision of what Classic Plus would be is basically what would happen if we just never went to TBC. Like, that's what I envision Classic Plus is. And you can take a lot of features that have been added into the game and put them in to Classic WoW and have it still feel like Classic. But it has to be done in such a way that I don't know if it's possible for them to do it. I really feel like Classic Plus is an impossible task, and I don't know how they do it correctly.
I want to run something past you here. It's a little bit of an augmented version of a different idea I heard from a different YouTuber. Shout out Idle, another YouTube essayist. If you guys like MMO content, support that guy. And so
I love Idle, by the way.
Yeah, Idle's great. Idle's the best. Him and I sat down a couple months ago and talked about this stuff. And his idea, and Idle, sorry if I'm misrepresenting it, is essentially to make the leveling experience in Classic Plus just almost like RuneScape, where instead of just capping at 60 and then the raids begin, instead they're like pushing raids down, extending leveling to be longer, and instead of like hitting 60, it's just a soft cap that you keep going past. But like Molten Core becomes like a level 40 piece of content, and getting from 40 to 45 is akin to getting from like 40 to 60 in Classic right now. And then it just keeps going up and up and up, and you're not expected to hit max. Just hitting max.
That's a BDO.
BDO, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I do kind of like that. I don't know how well that would be received. I do feel like that would get voted down. Although I would like it, I think that it would get voted down in the community. I do think that they need to fundamentally change the way that how you interact with NPCs, like how you land damage in the game. I love RuneScape. You can go kill a mob 1,000 levels higher than you in RuneScape. It's just going to take you longer. or if you don't have the right gear. And then gear allows you to be able to hit that mob better.
Yeah.
So that is a design advantage. That is just another one of many design advantages that RuneScape has over WoW. And that's why I think they need to make the game more like RuneScape for it to feel more like a classic MMO. And they can extend that journey by making some of those fundamental changes, like how you can hit a mob. Maybe you hit a mob for less damage. Maybe you guys can do Molten Core at level 40. I think that would be sick. Those type of ideas, I think, are what's going to make classic feel more classic. But they need a classic, but that's relevant to today's standards and how much people consume games, etc.
That's why,
because people consume video games way too fast now. Like that classic journey used to take 2 months. Now it takes a week.
Yeah, definitely. I will say, I think for as much as I love the polling system, I made a whole video about it for old school RuneScape. I really think it works amazingly, even if I sometimes disagree, with some of the choices. My take with Classic Plus, and feel free to disagree, it's totally fine. I think Blizzard needs to grow a pair and like actually just be designers again. I think one of my big issues with retail is that Blizzard has just kind of become spineless. Like their spines have become gelatin ever since Shadowlands. They're just like, okay, I'm sorry. We're just going to do what the players say. I'm sorry. Player housing. Yeah. And they just like, they don't want to do anything different. They're just like pussies. I'm sorry. Like, it's just, they're so scared of doing another Shadowlands that they're never going to do another Legion. And that's the problem. And Classic WoW Blizzard needs to grow a pair, think about what makes Classic good, and deliver players not what they say they want, but give them what they need.
Yes, they need to get their identity back and cater to a small group of players instead of everyone.
You can't make an MMO that caters to people that don't like MMOs. And I think for the longest time, Blizzard has kind of settled for doing that.
They have done that.
Yeah, 100%. Do you like Legion, by the way? This is off topic. Do you like Legion? Or are you one of the Legion people that were like, eh?
Dude, I quit in Wrath of the Lich King and I came back in Battle for Azeroth.
No.
I did not play WoW in college. Like my whole college, like I had like a 7 or 8 year span where I just did not play WoW. So I never played Legion.
Oh my God. Well, listen, man, while you were getting laid, I was raid leading in Legion. Okay. And let me tell you, it was fucking awesome. It was sick. Now Legion is, are you ready for like the hottest take in this video? It's my favorite WoW expansion. And I would go so far as to say it's probably the only WoW expansion where Blizzard like had an actual vision for the game that's different than what it was before. They kind of made the game into an ARPG, right? With like these like crazy rare legendaries that totally transformed your character, with these like really long form progression systems that would like kind of have seasonal resets to them. And I think people loved it in Legion. And I'm sure you're familiar with the whole conversation about borrowed power and BFA and Shadowlands and stuff. People hated it, right?
Yeah, I've played it.
Yeah.
I played those.
And to me,
the borrowed power thing is like, it's such a, in my opinion, bad design, and especially how vertical the game is in retail, that it just like, it feels like if you're a week behind, then there's no point. And then it feels like, oh, well, 4 months into the expansion, like, and everything's going to reset in 2 months. So now I'm not going to play. And like, that should never be the feeling when you're playing an MMO. An MMO should be like a forever type of game that you can quit and come back to whenever you want. And you don't feel like your progress is lost. And that's why I love classic MMOs.
And listen, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And that's kind of what I like about Legion a little bit, where instead of going that direction, which is my ideal for an MMO, there's a reason I love, OSRS, but with Legion, it kind of like sold me the vision of like, well, what if an MMO was like Path of Exile? Like, what if we do that, right? Where you do have these like really long grinds and you do have this vertical progression, and what if it like we catch you up at the end of every season and a new season kind of starts fresh, but like at that point, throughout like the start of the season to the end of it, you still get that full MMO like progression experience just at an expedited rate, with the interesting loot that changes your character, that like changes your build, that with interesting itemization and choices to make with how you equip your legendaries, how you level your artifact weapon. It wasn't like the ideal MMO, but it was an actual vision for it. And to me personally, with the borrowed power situation, I don't think borrowed power is inherently bad. I think just Blizzard kind of nailed it with Legion, or at least began to nail it. And instead of growing it and growing their iteration of it and making it even better, they reset it all and then like try to do it again, like rebuild it from ground zero again with half the time in BFA. So my hot take is that people didn't. It's not that people don't like borrowed power. It's that they think that its implementation in BFA was dog shit, which it was, by the way. It was terrible. Like that's my take on it. But like, I don't know. I still obviously prefer a more traditional MMO experience.
Yeah, I think that what they're doing in retail now is very interesting with Midnight and getting rid of all the combat add-ons. And I am so curious to see how it goes if it's well received. I might even, try some Midnight off stream and see how it is when it comes out.
Yeah.
Because the player base has kind of been asking for this for so long because they've been designing the game around add-ons and weak auras for so long. That's like, what would happen if, we never had them? And now it's like, it's weird though. Once you start taking things away from people, they don't like it. So it's another,
nerfs always feel bad.
I want to see how that goes.
Yeah, agreed. Nerfs always feel bad, right? Like and I didn't play during this time, but in OSRS, the blowpipe at one point was the most broken weapon in the entire game, to the point where they couldn't actually increase ranged armor capabilities. Like they couldn't have ranged strength bonuses on gear because it would disproportionately affect the blowpipe, which was already broken. It was so busted. And yet, when they nerfed it finally, after years and years of it being broken, there was still a portion of the player base that was upset by that because they're so used to having the blowpipe. It still feels bad, taking away that level of power. So nerfs always feel bad, That's why you got to get it right the first time.
Yeah, that's why maybe you poll people and ask if they want it, but who knows? I mean, people might have passed all the weak auras and add-ons and things like that. So yeah, the player base could have been wrong. But the thing about that's why I like the poll system, because if the player base is wrong, then the devs can be like, hey, y'all said you wanted this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they don't have to take the blame for it.
But selfishly, I'm like, I don't care if the devs take the blame for it. I just want a good game, And right now, I'm afraid that if they pull the add-on system, maybe we're wrong here, or maybe I'm wrong here. But I have the fear that the majority voting would vote to keep them. And I agree with you. The add-ons, the combat add-ons, are such a crutch for World of Warcraft. They are such a crutch, and they make the game look ugly as hell. So, like, removing that is a good step in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely.
So I do have a question, actually, and this is more OSRS related, right? So right at this point, you're like toward the end of mid-game. That's what I would say, right? Like you're toward the end of mid-game. You're getting into the end game probably somewhat soonish, right? What has been like, so you obviously love PVM. Everybody, I think, that does it loves PVM and OSRS. What's been like your favorite boss so far? Like what's been your, you're like, oh shit, this guy's awesome.
For me, my favorite bosses so far have been, well, selfishly, on an Iron Man, I love the drops that Muspa gives. I think it's the best. Like per kill, it gives so many different like prayer pots, Raynar seeds, like things like that. I was loving Muspa and learning that boss. So that's kind of been my favorite one. And then before that would be Zulrah. As far as like the quick kill bosses where, you don't have to like, it's not a fire cape thing where you're going in for 2 hours or whatever, trying to do that, which I also love that challenge. But right now I would say Muspa, Zulrah, and then of course the Inferno right now that I'm learning is definitely amazing. But my favorite content overall, I would say, is CG.
Okay. Reasonable. Honestly, reasonable. I think CG is incredible.
It's because CG is such a like point in the game where you have to learn how to click and move and swap prayers, and it gives amazing rewards. It gives the best mid-game item in the game, the crystal set with the Bofa, which propels you to endgame. Also, you get tons of money, which you need on an Iron Man. And I just think that CG is like the best midpoint design to teach you what's going to be happening the rest of the game and giving you the gear and resources to like carry you to that next point.
Yeah, I remember doing CG for the first time a couple months into my Iron Man, just like you did. And it was like a come to Jesus moment. Like nothing in the game before that was even a quarter as difficult. So you're going into CG and you're kind of like, oh, this is real shit right here. Like the
game has difficulty.
Yeah, like you're not fucking around. This is not Moons. This is not Scurious. This is real shit. And it took me a while to really nail Corrupted Gauntlet, like to get those runs down and get them consistent. And just like you, I did like 300 of them in a month. But like it took a while to get there. And that's what really kind of like clicked my like, Tylenol brain on a little bit. And I was like, okay, like I do have motivation to continue going and figuring out what's going on down the line. I'm curious, like, obviously you like the Inferno, you're enjoying all that. Is there any like boss and content that you're looking forward to more than anything else?
Dude, just honestly getting that fire cape and the Coliseum, I'm looking forward to doing that. Those are like, I feel like those are the premier raid slash item slash challenges in RuneScape, besides Zuckelm, of course, being the ultimate challenge. But having that status symbol on your back of a quiver or an infernal cape is the coolest thing, in my opinion, in RuneScape. There is nothing else I want to do more than get those items. And I really, really think that Classic WoW needs stuff like that.
Yeah.
They need status symbols to separate you from the game, like to separate you from others. And that's what an MMO is. It's just a glorified trophy that shows, how good you are or how much time you put into the game. And ultimately, that's what people like to flex.
Yeah,
those type of things.
That kind of goes back to the whole Trinity system that you mentioned, right? That's the issue with it in some ways, where it helps with group content, undeniably, but it's very difficult to design solo content for it because it's hard to balance solo content when you need healers and tanks and DPS and different kits all to fit within that singular kind of model. That's where solo content works so well in RuneScape. I think like I agree with you completely, and I like how you kind of make an argument, or my argument, for not being for transmog. I hate transmog, and it's because it kind of devalues stuff like what you just outlined. Seeing a dope cape and going, "That's the best cape in the game," that means so much,
Yeah, but you can make the hard stuff in the game, like an ornament kit in WoW, and I would be okay with it, right? Where if you turn your tier 3 helmet into a glowing tier 3 helmet because you beat a deathless sub 20-minute Nax speed run with 20 players or something like that. You know what I mean? Like how they had some achievements. I think that Classic WoW needs an achievement system, and it's tough to do solo achievements. I guess you could do stuff like that for groups, but you need that 0.01% challenges in the game for people to like go after that, enjoy that type of challenge in your MMO.
Yeah.
And Classic doesn't have any titles or achievements or anything like that really besides High Warlord, which is just a AFK queue into Alterac Valley for 3 months.
True. Yeah. My friend did that.
It used to be whoever could sleep the least amount for 6 months. And now it's like everybody gets one because they changed the way it interacts, right? So it's less cooldown.
What class did you play in Classic?
So I started with Hunter and then swapped over to Warrior because I kind of got bored of Hunter, and I was like, I'll never do top damage on my Hunter, so I became a Warrior main, and then I started like making lots of guides and stuff for Warrior once I got better at it.
So I'm a Hunter, so it's funny you bring that up. I was a Hunter main. The Hunter is my favorite class in Classic, and but not because it does damage or anything. Are you familiar with tribute runs?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's more along the lines where it would be cool if every class could do stuff like that. Because that's what makes Hunter unique, is it's the only class in the game that can actually do damage to mobs that are 10 levels higher than it. Which allows you to do fun self-imposed challenges like soloing a tribute run. And no other class can do it besides mages, which mages, they can't necessarily do DM tribute, but they could do a lot of other cool things, that no one else can do, like getting up millions of XP per hour or AoE farming. And so having like those niche things that every class can do is tough design-wise.
Unfortunately. And that's part of the Trinity system that you mentioned too, right? And the kind of outlier there too is all of those things that you just outlined and I just outlined are all completely unintentional, right? They're all just totally by accident. They're emergent gameplay systems. Blizzard didn't design them to be done that way. It's just Blizzard didn't patch them out, which is good. But like now we have to put Blizzard into a difficult task of not only creating a game that facilitates that kind of stuff, but also designing that kind of stuff with intention. Because tributes, I loved doing tribute runs. They're like my favorite piece of content in Classic. It was so much fun. It's difficult, it's challenging, but it's really rewarding. So yeah, I'd love stuff like that with that level of challenge and that level of like needing to understand your character kit and the unique kits available in Classic to make that work well. Yeah, for sure.